Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock, everyone. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Creating a Fundraising Structure in Little Green Light. We're so grateful that you are attending, and we are hopeful that you will find this useful to your fundraising efforts. So let's get started. I'm Felicia Terry, and I am the Principal Specialist with Nonprofit Software Specialists, LLC, otherwise called NPSS. I have with me Sarah Dean Hale. She is NPSS's partner.
Hello, nice to meet you guys.
And her information is also there.
I am realizing though that the screen is not sharing
Oh.
quite. We have the chat enabled. Are you guys able to see different slides, or is it currently still in the building phase of the PowerPoint? Oh, now it's switched over.
Oh, did it?
Yes.
Okay.
But it only switched so it's like that, just so you're aware.
Oh, okay.
First time using Google Hangouts, so thanks for your patience with it.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I'm wondering because when I switched over, let's see, I could go through that way.
Oh, I wonder, Okay. Now, if you click on that, can you just play the whole slide?
Oh, okay. I think, no, let me try something else. So if I
they
go
can
back,
see the slides, but it's blurry, and they're seeing this full screen here. So if we can't figure this out in like a minute or so, we'll just keep moving forward because we don't want to hold back.
Okay. So maybe I should do this.
Just click within that if you're able to.
Nope. I'm not able to click through it. Huh, that's interesting. Screen sharing.
Click the arrow. Maybe stop presenting and just restart the screen share process when the light's freezing.
Okay, sorry everyone. We're going to stop screen sharing and then we're going to try to restart this. So bear with us, please. So what if I did this?
Oh. Now can you click down on the next slide? But if you do this view and you click on it, it changes it. Okay, so we're just gonna have to go with that. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so you can see that. Okay, so change of plans. We'll still have the webinar, but you will see it a little bit differently than what we planned. But the show will go on. So if you can see my screen, we are at Who We Are. So I was just telling you who I am, Felicia Terry, and then I introduced Sarah Dean Hale, who's also going to be on handling any questions and moderating for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Just to tell you a little bit about Nonprofit Software Specialists, we are an LGL migration partner. And so we have actually assisted many clients moving from various donor management softwares and even MS Excel spreadsheets. We also provide other services such as database assessments, data cleanup, customized remote and on-site LGL training, policies and procedures documentation, and anything else that's LGL related. Okay, so moving on. So let's get to why you signed on to this webinar. So what is a fundraising structure in Little Green Light? In Little Green Light, I know you're probably all familiar with that bar at the top where it shows your fundraising. And then underneath, if you click on fundraising, it has campaign funds and appeals. So a fundraising structure in LGL is how to organize your campaigns, funds, and appeals to deliver the most accurate information about your nonprofit. So let's talk a little bit about what each part of that, campaign funds and appeals, are, and how we normally see nonprofits set up their campaigns, funds and appeals, or their fundraising structures. So usually what we see is we see an organization starts off with their campaigns, and just as a lesson on what campaigns are, because I get this question all the time, is campaigns are or should indicate what your organization's overall objectives for raising money. They should also allow you to provide management level reporting on overall objectives for raising money. And they're recommended that they're created every calendar or fiscal year, and the calendar and fiscal year designation is in the name of the campaign. We're going to get more into that later on. And so we're going to move on to funds, or excuse me, appeals.
Let me just stop you for a second.
Sure.
It's showing up blurry on a lot of screens, so just know that a lot of them can't read everything there, so just go through like a little bit more detail of what you're sharing.
Okay, yeah. I apologize for that. And so I will read it word for word. So our next, what we normally see with organizations is appeals. And so appeals, what they are your fundraising methods or your strategies, or how do you plan to raise the money, or what prompted the donation to come in. Appeals should allow you to provide detailed reporting on the specifics of which strategies are most effective at your organizations. And again, we'll talk more about that as we move along. Moving along, the last topic is funds. And so funds usually indicate what the gift or donation is for and how the gift or donation should be spent. It's usually the code used to reconcile with the structure of your organization's accounting software, chart of accounts. So this is the biggest thing that I see. Most organizations, they want to reconcile with their business or their finance office. However, their funds have not been created in a way that reflect what your business office and what your finance office sees. So this is what a fund should really look like. And then what we recommend is that it corresponds to that single GL code, which is on your business side. So you'll notice what we see is campaigns on top, appeals in the middle, and then funds below. But there's a problem with this structure. A donation actually can have any combination of campaign funds and appeals. So it's not a hierarchy, which this is the issue that we see with a lot of our organizations or our clients, is that they have a hierarchy for their fundraising structure. So what we're going to do is, in this webinar, we're going to show you how the best way to do that. But I want to just talk a little bit, as I just have described, that this is not a hierarchy with campaigns on the top, select funds associated with campaigns, and certain appeals associated with each fund. But I want to stress that there is no right or wrong way to set up campaigns, which is usually the most difficult. And we're going to talk about that, as long as they reflect the broadest ways your organization reports is giving. Okay. So here's what we recommend. Think of your fundraising structure in terms of buckets. So I know that most of you have blurry screens, but we do have on the screen 3 beautiful buckets. And underneath each one of those buckets says campaigns for the first bucket, appeals for the second bucket, and funds for the third bucket. Okay, so thinking about that, again, fundraising structure in terms of buckets, let's talk a little bit about campaigns. So this is usually the hardest for organizations to actually understand and to wrap their minds around. So if you'll notice, again, we've talked about this a little bit, that campaigns are how you provide management level reporting on overall objectives for raising money. So that's a lot of words. And so you're probably thinking, what does that actually mean? So let's go through some examples of that. So in our example 1, and these examples come from working with organizations over the years and even clients that we have now, how we have recommended they set their campaigns up in little green light. So you may have an organization that, say for example, you report to your board, and maybe in an annual report a certain way. You want this bucket of money to be presented in such a way that is easily understandable to your board and also to in your annual report. And so if you like to report based on your annual campaign, if you're a membership organization, based on your membership campaign, if you have lots of special events and you like to lump those special events all in one campaign based on that, then if you have scholarships at your organization, you may have a scholarship campaign. You may even have a capital campaign where you're raising money for bricks and mortar. And then some organizations even have an endowment campaign and a planned giving campaign. So this example shows you if you are an organization in which you like to present your giving in these various buckets. Okay. Let's go on to our second example. So in our second example, I had a client that the way they represent or like to present their donations to their board, and then also in their annual report, they like to know what individuals gave, what organizations or corporations gave, what foundations gave, and what government grants gave. So this is how they do their reporting. So if this is how they like to see the dollars in the reporting, then this is what we recommended how their campaigns should be set up. Okay? So let's move on to appeals. So appeals usually are pretty simple for everyone. Most people understand this. This is what prompted the gift. And so let's give some examples of what appeals could possibly be. So in this example, you'll notice you have your end of year mailing, you have your board giving, you have your golf tournament or any special event as an appeal. And then one thing that I usually recommend for nonprofits and organizations is to set up an appeal called unsolicited. And so what this means is if you do not, if a donation comes into your organization and it wasn't solicited, say for example, it didn't come in response to the end of year giving, or the board appeal or the golf tournament, but it just came in out of the blue for you to be able to set up or create an appeal called unsolicited. So you'll notice one thing I didn't point out with campaigns, but I'll point out with appeals, you'll notice how we have the names of the appeals. So if you look at this, we have used FY 1516 for the end of the year mailing and the board giving and the unsolicited. And the reason why we do that is, why we recommend that is, if you're an organization that is based on a fiscal year, your fundraising is based on a fiscal year, we recommend that you set up your appeals and also your campaigns based on that fiscal year. There are several reasons behind that. One, so that when you're looking in LGL, that all of your appeals for that year fall alphabetical or chronological. But then also when you're going in to make these appeals and campaigns inactive at some point, that again, they fall chronological and you can easily mark them as inactive instead of having to search all over your appeals, finding all of your appeals that were for that year that you want to make inactive. You'll also notice that the golf tournament is structured a little bit differently. We have named that the 2016 golf tournament. Yes, it may occur in the 15-16 fiscal year. However, it is the golf tournament for 2016, and so we want to make sure we make that designation. Okay, so moving on. So last, we have funds. And so funds are how that gift is going to be used. Now remember, I talked a little bit before about typically this is going to be the field that's going to be reconciled with your business office or your finance office. So it's going to be a good idea to know how your business office or your finance office has this structured so that your funds in LGL can reflect that. Okay, so let's look at some examples of how some organizations may have their funds structured. So in this example, you will notice there is an unrestricted fund. And so this is pretty typical. Most of the organizations that I've worked with, they have an unrestricted fund. You may call it an annual fund. It's where when money comes in, it's not restricted. It can go to anything that your organization would like to use the money for. And so that's an unrestricted fund, or again, something like an annual fund, whatever you want to call it. It represents those gifts that don't have a designation. However, some of you or some organizations may have areas where you may want to designate the money, such as, and in this example, we have a John H. Smith Scholarship Fund. So you may have different scholarships and they may be represented by a fund. You also may be in a capital campaign and you're building a building, obviously, then you would have a building fund. And then I've also seen where in some business offices and finance offices, they like to separate each one of the special events. So in this example, for LGL, we have a fund called Golf Tournament. Okay. So now let's actually look at what this would look like in LGL or with our bucket scenario. If you received a gift from a donor and how that's reflected with our bucket scenario. So you'll notice we have our buckets. We have our campaign buckets, which is how you provide management level reporting or on an overall objectives for raising money. We have your appeals, which what prompts the gifts. And then we have the funds, which is how the gift will be used. And at the top, we have 3 balls. So moving on to the next screen, we're going to talk about how each one of these balls will represent going through each one of the buckets. Okay, so let's take an example from our fictitious organization called Aid Restore. Aid Restore has an LGL account, and they are raising money in probably similar ways that you're raising money. So we're going to look at how we've created the fundraising structure there. So like most other organizations, like probably your organization, Aid and Restore has a development team, and the development team could be many people. It could be one person. It could be various people that have maybe not have that particular role as a development officer, but they are still fundraising. So at any rate, you'll notice Aid and Restore has a development team, and they have campaigns that they have created. And so in this example, we have our fiscal year 15-16 annual giving. We have our fiscal 15-16 special events. And we also have our capital campaign, which we've labeled 2015 through 2017 capital campaign. Aid and Restore also has created these appeals. And so remember, appeals are what prompted the gift. And so in this example, Aid and Restore has created a 2016 EOY appeal, which is the end of year appeal. They also have the board member ask. They have a mailing that they do, and then they have social media and that way in which they raise money. And last, Aid and Restore has funds that they've created in LGL, which are, again, tell you how the gift will be used. So in this example, Aid and Restore has unrestricted fund, a new building fund, and an emergency aid fund. Okay, so in this example, let's pretend that we have a donor and they give $1,000. And so in LGL, we want to figure out how this will look in with our bucket structure. And so with that donation of $1,000, you'll notice that that individual, let's say, for example, that they gave through the end of year appeal, and it was through a mailing. So that green ball is going to go into the appeal bucket. And then we have to determine which campaign. And so let's, for example, pretend that because that individual is giving through the annual giving campaign, they're not giving for the capital campaign, or they're not giving for special events or anything like that. They are specifically giving to the campaign of the fiscal year 15-16 annual giving campaign. And so the green ball goes into that bucket. And last, we have to determine what fund or what bucket of funds the $1,000 goes into. And so because the donor did not specify with their check or with a written note saying that they wanted it to go to a scholarship fund or wanted it to go to the building fund, they are just giving as a response to the end of year appeal, and they're saying, please use my donation wherever it's best needed. And so we're going to choose unrestricted. So you'll notice that with that bucket structure, you have your different, your balls in each one of those buckets. Each one are not represented or not a hierarchy of each other. And so you can easily determine how, when you're in LGL, how to code those different gifts that you receive. Okay. Questions?
And you guys can use the chat if you have any questions.
Yeah, I should have said that. Yes, please use the chat if you have any questions. Maybe questions about how you currently have your funds, campaigns, and appeals structured, or questions about anything that we've talked about so far. No questions? Okay, well, great. Well, let's do this. Since we don't have any questions, let's actually get into LGL. And let's see if anyone has any questions about either campaigns, funds, and appeals, how that works in LGL, and then we can go from there. So let me switch, and let me just make sure that you're able to see that. So can everyone see my screen?
You actually have to go back and then share that specific thing.
Okay, let's do this.
Is it there? The little green light.
There. No.
Browser.
Okay. Well, that's not it right there.
Yeah, try screen share again.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry about that, everyone.
You know what? If you hit that.
And share.
And then click over on the tab.
Okay.
There we go.
Now, sorry about that. We're using a new software, or we're using actually Google Hangouts again for the first time, so we apologize. So can everyone see my screen? I am in Aid Restore's LGL account.
I can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about campaigns, funds, and appeals, how they're structured in LGL, or have specific questions about even coding gifts in your particular system that we can problem solve today? No questions?
No.
Okay, well, I guess everyone has their campaign funds and appeals correctly set up. So does anyone have any questions regarding LGL period? We can use this time to actually answer any questions that are LGL related.
What's the difference between an event and an appeal?
Okay, good question. I actually get this question a lot. So an event, you'll notice, events and appeals appear in LGL. So appeals, they look like this. And so usually appeals, they describe your fundraising method or your strategy. So your strategy may be an end of year appeal, but then it also may be an event like a spring gala. So with that example, you could have events that you set up as appeals. So if you're looking at this screen, you'll notice that we have the 2016 appeal, we have the spring gala, we have unsolicited, the 15-16 unsolicited, we have grant proposals, and we have spring mailings. However, if we go to appeals, you'll notice appeals, we have that, oh, sorry, events. So when we go to events, we still have that spring gala, which we've created. And so events are specifically for your events that you have. They could mean paid or unpaid events that your organization has. The benefit of setting up both is the appeals tracks the money end of it. So if I want to make sure that if later on I want to run reports based on how much money was raised for a particular appeal, and one of my appeals happens to be the spring gala, I want to know how much money was raised from that spring gala. As opposed to if I want to know how many people participated for an event, the only way I can truly know that is by going to events. And you'll notice in the middle, in LGL, you have the opportunity to invite individuals and organizations to events. And then you also have the opportunity to code them as attended, and you can run reports. So again, appeals primarily refer to the money of the fundraising strategies, and the events appeal specifically with either paid or unpaid events that your organization may have, so that you can track the invitations or who attended that event. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Okay. Well, no questions then. So I gather that everyone is using LGL to its fullest and is really enjoying LGL. While I have this time, one of the things that we are doing is we are working to create more online experiences that are obviously that are free of issues like this one had, but we've chosen a few topics that we're thinking about, and so Sarah is going to add a poll that she'd love for you to complete, and so we would just love for you to weigh in and let us know what topic is the one that you have like a burning question about, or that you have really, would love for us to be able to create so that you can learn more about. And
I'll just add on to that with the courses that we're working on. They're going to go pretty in depth for what you're able to do with Little Green Light. So if there are areas that you are already using with your organization, but you want to be able to do something even further with it, then this is what we're looking to be able to create as a new level. Some really great learning experiences that really help your organization. You can hit stop there. Yeah. We do have one question. How do I delete a bunch of names at once?
So when you're referring to deleting names, what's the purpose in deleting these names?
Waiting. And while we're answering that question, if you guys can vote on that poll, if any of those topics do interest you, that would be awesome.
So would the purpose be, until we get that question, you have a list of names that are that are old, and they have no email addresses. I want to delete them. How do I delete so it looks like you have about 365 names that you want to delete. Unfortunately, you can't do that yourself, or there's no global way of doing that. However, one of the things that I have found, if you reach out to LGL, they may be able to do this for you very easily. The one thing that they probably will ask you to do is there's something that that kind of unifies all of those organizations or individuals in your system. Do they have a certain coding? Do they belong to a certain group? Or are they all the individuals that don't have emails? And the reason why I'm asking that is because what will make it easier, at least if LGL support can do this, is if you are able to create a report or create a list of all of these individuals. And obviously, when you create a list, you can add them individually, but if you put them in a group, or they have a certain coding, then you can easily use that criteria to group these individuals into a list. So yes. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, what I would recommend is that So what I would recommend is I would reach out to LGL, but prior to you reaching out to LGL, to create that list. And you don't have a group designation. There are no gifts, no email addresses. So are these all the people that have no gifts and no email addresses? If so, then what you can do is you can create a list of all of those individuals and or organizations that don't have emails or addresses, or gifts. And you'll have now that list of all of those individuals and organizations. If there's individuals and organizations on that list or in that list that you don't wish to delete, then you can easily delete them from that list. Does that make sense? Okay. And I would definitely reach out to LGL. In the past, I have had clients where they've created things like appeals or campaigns and things like that, which LGL has been more than happy to delete for them. But there has to be some way of them knowing which ones to delete. So if you'll do that and reach out to them, they may be able to help you. Okay, and so I'm reading some other questions. So it's question is, do you have ideas to quickly add the same contact report notes to multiple constituents? Actually, yes, I do. And so again, do these individuals and organizations, do they belong to a group, or do they have some kind of criteria that you can create a list for them? If you do, then you can easily do that in LGL. So let me actually.
Oh, you'd have to screen share again.
So let me screen share.
You can do that one. Then click over there.
And let me give you an example of that. So say, for example, I have some individuals that I want to add some notes about that individual or those individuals. And so if you'll notice under constituents, you'll notice there's list manager. And so I'm going to use a list that has been created. It's called donors who have donated twice. And so I'm actually going to go into that list, and I'm going to click on the constituents tab. And so this is going to show me all of my constituents from that list. Now I can click on the more actions from that list of constituents, and I can click on add a task to list. The other options are add goal to list, there's update stewards, and there's update categories. Was your question add task or contact reports?
Contact report notes.
Okay, so if there's contact reports, so unfortunately you'll notice that the only global options that they have in LGL is to add tasks, goals, stewards, and categories. However, you could import that information into the system. So again, everything in LGL will usually, or most things in LGL will revolve around making sure that you have some criteria to group these individuals and organizations by. So in this group of individuals, the very first thing that you'll want to do is be able to group them, and you can group them into a list, or you can create a report. And then what I would recommend is coming here to reports and building a report. And you can build a constituent report really easily. And the purpose in this is because you want to export these individuals out of LGL with their LGL constituent IDs, because then you're going to want to re-import them back into the system. So say, for example, if, let's say I want to customize, first let's search. I want to search for these individuals. And let's say they pertain to a certain group. So let me look for groups. There. And now if I select, let's say board members, let's use this example. So I'll select board members. Now I want to customize this. So the whole purpose in this report is just so that we can get all of their LGL constituent IDs. And so I've pulled my criteria. I know that there's 2 constituents. You'll probably have more. And now all I want to do is I want to select the fields I want to export out of the system. So I can click on LGL constituent ID. And let's say I want their first and their last name, just to verify. And then if I click on preview, you'll notice it shows the LGL constituent ID, their first and last name. And then I want to save this report. And so I can call this anything. So, or and I want to make sure I choose generate export as well and click on save report. And so you're probably familiar with when you save the report, either you can refresh it or that report will be sent to you by email. Since I refreshed it, I can click on that report or that Excel document. And so now what I have is I have the LGL constituent ID.
I was not going to show that.
Oh, okay. So how do I do that?
You would go back to the Hangout.
So let me go back to Hangout and
we can stop. You're going to share your whole screen. Right here.
okay, let's try this and see if this works. Okay, so now you should be able to see that Excel spreadsheet. And so again, it has the LGL constituent ID, which is the most important. And so now what you want to do is you want to be able to add the information to this spreadsheet so that you can import it into the system. So with contact reports, I'm basing this on memory. So we know that usually in the contact report, you're going to have a date, you're going to have a contact type. You're also going to have the summary, and you're going to have the detail. And if you're familiar with contact reports, you'll know that you always have to create a detail, which is the body of the actual contact report. So you'll have to make sure you have the date, the contact type, the summary, and the detail. And so you would fill in all of your information and then go to the Flex importer and then import this information into LGL. When you're importing this information into LGL, just keep in mind that you don't have to re-import the first name and the last name, so you don't have to map those fields. Okay, great. Okay, well, I hope that this was useful to you, and hopefully these other demonstrations on topics that weren't related to campaign funds and appeals were useful to you. We hope to do more webinars similar to this, and we'll be reaching out to you and keeping you updated on what the results were to that poll that we created. And so Sarah is asking me.
Oh, just go ahead and vote before we sign off here for the poll that's over there on the side. We have a few votes, but would love to get everybody's thoughts on that as well.
Okay, great, thanks. And we'll give everyone a couple of moments. It's really quick and easy to vote, and that will help us to be able to create webinars that are useful for you in the future. Okay. Okay, well, I hope everyone has a great rest of the afternoon, and I hope to be speaking to you soon. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.